Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep, really deep, into the amazing world of how cells talk to each other.
It's like we're shrinking down to the microscopic level.
Right. We're diving into cellular communication, focusing on one pathway that's, well, it's kind of like a superstar when it comes to how your cells function and grow.
And respond to all kinds of signals.
Exactly. That's the ERK pathway. Ever heard of it?
I bet most of our listeners have, but
Yeah.
just in case.
Yeah, we'll break it down. We've got a fantastic article from Assay Genie to guide us, kind of like our map for this journey.
It's a fascinating pathway. Once you understand how it works, it can really give you insights into some pretty big stuff, like how cells grow and divide.
And even how some of those targeted cancer therapies are developed.
Absolutely. So much potential there.
Okay, before we get too far ahead, let's back up a sec. Can you just give us the basics? What exactly is the ERK pathway?
Well, imagine a chain reaction inside your cells happening at a crazy small scale.
Okay, I'm picturing a tiny explosion.
Not quite an explosion, but a cascade of events.
Okay, a cascade.
And it all starts when a cell gets a signal, a message, from outside.
So something outside the cell tells the inside to do something.
That's a great way to put it, and the full name actually kind of gives it away. Extracellular Signal Regulated Kinase, or ERK.
Okay, I see that.
So a kinase inside the cell being regulated by something outside.
Regulated, so like controlled.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of a bigger family of signaling pathways.
Right.
These are called mitogen-activated protein kinases, MAPKs for short.
MAPKs, got it.
But we're all about ERK today.
ERK all the way. So how does this chain reaction, this cascade, actually work? Like, what are the steps?
Well, think of it like a relay race.
I like that.
Yeah, each molecule is like a runner passing a baton to the next.
And where are they running to? What's the finish line?
The finish line is the nucleus.
Ah, the nucleus, the brain of the cell.
That's one way to think about it. The control center, where all the cell's DNA is stored. And that message, that baton, can tell the cell to do all sorts of things.
Like what?
Grow, divide, basically change its behavior.
Or even self-destruct.
Unfortunately, yeah, sometimes that happens too.
Wow, so powerful. Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. So who are the key players in this relay race? Give me the rundown.
All right, so we start with something called receptor tyrosine kinases, or RTKs.
RTKs. Those are long names.
I know, right? But they're basically sitting on the cell's surface, like at the starting line, waiting for the signal.
Okay, I see.
And then along comes a growth factor. That's our starting pistol.
Okay, growth factor, starting pistol. Got it. Then what?
Well, it binds to the RTK.
Binds, like sticks to it.
Exactly. And that activates the first runner, a protein called SOS.
SOS, like, help.
Well, kinda. It's basically passing the signal to the next runner, RAS.
Okay, so SOS gets the signal from the starting pistol and takes off.
Yeah, and RAS is fast. It speeds off to activate another player called RAF kinase.
Another kinase. So we've got two kinases so far.
We do. They're essential for this whole process.
All right, RAF kinase is up next. Then what?
RAF activates MEK. MEK then activates the star player ERK.
So ERK is the final runner, the one who crosses the finish line.
That's right, carrying the message all the way to the nucleus.
To the control center. And that message determines what happens to the cell.
It does. Whether it divides, changes its shape, or even produces certain proteins.
It's kind of crazy how much these tiny molecules control.
It's pretty amazing, right? Like this microscopic relay race is happening inside you all the time.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? So we've got the players, the runners, but how do they actually pass the baton? What's happening at each handoff?
It's all about phosphorylation. A phosphate group gets added to a protein, basically telling it, hey, wake up and do your job.
Like a little energy boost.
You can think of it that way. It's basically activating each runner in the relay.
So each runner needs that phosphate group to keep the message going.
Absolutely. And the whole cascade starts when those external signals, like the growth factors, bind to the RTKs.
The binding is like the starting pistol firing, and each phosphorylation is a runner getting the baton and taking off.
You got it. It's all beautifully laid out in the article. There's a figure. ERK signal transduction pathway.
Oh, yeah, I see it. It's really helpful to visualize it like that.
Definitely. So the binding triggers the whole phosphorylation cascade, keeps the message moving.
It's amazing how much is going on at such a tiny scale, like a perfectly choreographed dance.
It really is.
Uh,
But the question is, what determines how that dance ends? How does the same pathway lead to so many different things happening in the cell?
yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Shouldn't the outcome always be the same if it's the same pathway?
Well, it turns out the ERK pathway is more like a multi-purpose tool.
Okay, interesting.
The type of signal, how long the signal lasts, even what type of cell receives the signal, those can all change the outcome.
So it's like different tools in a toolbox.
Yeah, exactly. A quick tap on the shoulder means something different than a long hug, right?
Definitely different.
Same idea here. A short burst of ERK activation might just temporarily change the cell's shape. But if it's activated for longer, that could trigger some big changes.
Changes to the cell's DNA.
Yep, that could lead to the cell differentiating, becoming a whole new type of cell.
So the duration of the signal matters.
It does. But, like I said, the type of cell matters too. A skin cell is going to respond differently than a neuron, right?
Hey, they have totally different jobs.
So the ERK pathway has to be adaptable, respond differently based on the cell it's talking to.
So we've got the signal itself, how long it lasts, and what type of cell receives it.
All those work together to determine what happens next.
Wow, cellular communication is way more complex than I thought.
Right. But wait, it gets even more interesting. When this pathway gets messed up, things can go wrong.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
It can lead to things like cancer.
Okay, I was wondering when cancer was going to come up.
Well, remember how we talked about ERK being essential for cell growth and division?
Yeah.
In cancer, those processes get out of control. Cells just keep growing and dividing when they shouldn't.
So it's like the ERK pathway is stuck in the on position, sending those growth signals nonstop.
That's a great way to put it. And because it plays such a big role in cancer, scientists are really focusing on it.
Trying to find ways to shut it off.
Exactly. It's a prime target for new therapies.
Okay, we're definitely going to have to dive into that in more detail. This is fascinating stuff.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started.
Okay, so we know that this ERK pathway is super important for cells, and when it gets messed up, it can lead to some serious problems like cancer.
Exactly. And you mentioned that scientists are developing therapies to target it. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. What are they doing to target the ERK pathway?
Well, it's a really hot area of research right now. Scientists are working on these things called small molecule inhibitors. They're designed to block specific parts of the ERK pathway.
Inhibitors, so they're basically like stop signs for the pathway. But how do they work exactly? How do they block those specific parts?
Think of the pathway like a machine, with all these different gears working together. These inhibitors are like tiny wrenches, each one designed to jam a specific gear in the ERK machine.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. So instead of shutting down the entire machine, they're targeting specific gears to disrupt the whole process.
That's a great way to think about it. And by targeting different components of the pathway, researchers are hoping to come up with more precise treatments.
So are they focusing on any specific components?
Well, they're looking at things like RAF, MEK, and even ERK itself. Blocking those can have a big impact.
Wow, so they're really zooming in on those key players in the relay race. But wouldn't blocking those components also affect healthy cells? How do they make sure the inhibitors only target cancer cells?
That's a great question, and it's definitely one of the biggest challenges researchers are facing. You're absolutely right. The ERK pathway is essential for normal cell function, too.
So how do they avoid harming healthy cells?
Well, they're exploring a few different strategies. One way is to design inhibitors that are super specific, only targeting the forms of ERK that are overactive in cancer cells.
So it's like creating a key that only fits the lock on cancer cells.
Exactly. And another approach is to use drug delivery systems that can specifically target tumors, so the inhibitors are only released where they're needed.
That's amazing. It's like delivering a package right to the doorstep of the cancer cells without disturbing any of the other houses in the neighborhood.
That's a great analogy. And the potential benefits of these targeted therapies are huge. They could offer new options for patients who don't respond to traditional treatments, like chemotherapy.
And potentially with fewer side effects, right?
Right, because they're not attacking all the cells in the body, just the cancer cell.
That's incredible. So we've got these targeted inhibitors, but are there any other approaches scientists are exploring?
Yeah, definitely. They're looking into combination therapies using multiple inhibitors at the same time.
Oh, interesting. So instead of just one wrench, they're using a whole toolbox. What's the advantage of that?
Well, by hitting the pathway at multiple points, they're making it much harder for those cancer cells to become resistant to treatment.
So they're cutting off all their escape routes?
Exactly. It's like a multi-pronged attack on those cancer cells.
Yeah.
And it seems to be much more effective than using a single inhibitor.
It's like playing a game of chess with the cancer cells, anticipating their next move.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And this whole field of research is moving so fast, there's so much potential for breakthroughs in the near future.
This is all so fascinating. I had no idea there was so much going on in this area of research. But you mentioned earlier that ERK isn't just involved in cancer. Are scientists looking at its role in other diseases too?
Absolutely. The ERK pathway is involved in so many cellular processes, it's implicated in a wide range of diseases and conditions beyond cancer. For instance, researchers are looking at its role in neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease.
So this tiny pathway in our cells could hold clues to understanding these complex brain disorders.
That's right. Pretty amazing to think about, right?
It really is. And what about other areas? Are there any other diseases where the ERK pathway might play a role?
Well, researchers are also exploring its role in inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and inflammatory bowel disease.
Wow, so this one pathway is connected to so many different aspects of human health. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And the more we learn about pathways like ERK, the more we realize how interconnected everything is in the body and how much more there is to discover.
It's like this pathway is a key to understanding so many different doors in the human body.
That's a great way to put it. And that's why research in this area is so important. The more we learn about the ERK pathway, the more potential there is for developing new treatments and therapies for all sorts of diseases.
This is why I love these deep dives. You start with one specific topic, and it just opens up a whole world of connections and possibilities.
It's really amazing, isn't it? And with the ERK pathway, we're really just at the beginning. There's still so much to learn about how it works and how we can use that knowledge to improve human health.
So are there any specific areas of ERK research that you find particularly exciting or promising right now?
Well, one area that's really intriguing to me is the exploration of feedback loops within the pathway. It's not just a linear chain of events, it's more like a complex web of interactions.
Feedback loops, so the pathway can actually regulate itself.
Exactly. It's like a thermostat, constantly making adjustments to keep things in balance. And understanding those feedback loops could be key to developing even more targeted and effective therapies.
It's like the pathway has its own internal checks and balances.
I like that analogy. And then there's the whole area of crosstalk between the ERK pathway and other signaling pathways.
Crosstalk, so it's not just operating in isolation.
Not at all. It's constantly interacting and communicating with other pathways, which creates this incredibly complex network of signals that control how cells behave.
It's like a cellular social network,
Yeah.
with all these different pathways exchanging information and influencing each other.
That's a perfect analogy. And to develop really effective therapies, we need to understand this crosstalk, how it all fits together. We can't just focus on one pathway in isolation.
So we need to understand not just how ERK works on its own, but also how it interacts with all the other pathways in the cell. It's like trying to understand the language of an entire city.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research so challenging and so exciting. Every new discovery opens up new avenues to explore and new possibilities for improving human health.
It's amazing to think about all this happening at such a tiny scale, constantly shaping our health and well-being.
It really is. And it just shows how important it is to keep researching and exploring. There's still so much we don't know about the ERK pathway and its full potential.
So much to discover. Okay, so for someone who wants to learn more about this topic, where would you recommend they start? What are some good resources?
Well, the Assay Genie article we've been talking about is a great starting point. It gives a really clear overview of the pathway and its key components, and there's also a list of references for further reading.
Perfect. We'll definitely include those in the show notes. But before we wrap up, can you just sum up why this all matters? Why should people care about this tiny pathway?
The ERK pathway is a fundamental driver of cellular communication, which influences so many processes that are essential for life. From growth and development to disease and potential cures, understanding how this pathway works is crucial for improving human health.
So it's not just about cells talking to each other, it's about understanding how those conversations impact our lives in big ways.
Exactly. The more we understand about these cellular dialogues, the better equipped we'll be to use that knowledge to address some of the biggest health challenges facing humanity.
That's a powerful message. I love the idea of eavesdropping on the secrets of life itself. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive?
I would encourage everyone to just take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed today. Think about what you now know about the ERK pathway and its potential. What other areas of research might benefit from understanding this crucial cellular communication system?
That's a great question. It really makes you realize that everything is connected.
It is. And that's what's so cool about science. There's always more to discover.
It feels like we've been on this incredible journey, zooming in on this microscopic world and finding all this complexity.
And it's beautiful, too, the way it all works together.
It is. It's pretty amazing. And the fact that we've only scratched the surface, that's kind of mind-blowing.
There's so much more to learn, so much we don't know yet.
So much more to explore, which means there's got to be hope for even more breakthroughs, right?
Oh, absolutely. Every time we learn something new, it opens up new possibilities, new ways to treat diseases, new ways to help people.
This whole deep dive has been a wild ride. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on how cells communicate.
And hopefully a sense of wonder, too. Life is pretty incredible when you really think about it.
It is. Well, I want to thank you for being our guide on this journey. It's been a real pleasure learning from you.
The pleasure was all mine. I love talking about this stuff. It's so exciting.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the ERK pathway. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the world of cells with us. Remember to keep asking questions and keep learning. There's always something new to discover. We'll see you on our next deep dive.